Hello, are we
Good
live?
morning.
Let us know in the chat. I know we have at least one person here already, Derry, the fantastic, wonderful Derry. Let us
Yes.
know if you can see and hear us. I think we are live now. So, welcome back, Colin, for the last of our Liveship Traders spoiler chats. And we're going to be spoiler the whole way from the outset. So, if you have not read Ship of Destiny, if you have not read any of the Liveship Traders, just hold off on watching these because we'll likely spoil things for the whole series during this chat. So, it's an amazing series. We both loved it. So, if you haven't read it, get to it, and then you can come back to watch these videos later. So how you doing this morning,
Yes.
Colin?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really excited to talk about this. There's a lot to unpack in this one for sure.
Oh
As
yeah.
expected. But how you doing?
Oh good. Good. And I just had an amazing time with this book and series. Overall, I'm just so happy with the whole experience. Just went into it a little bit intimidated, a little bit worried that it was going to be really heavy, which it was. But I was engaged by so many different plot lines and characters and the setting and world building, and it was firing on all cylinders for me. It got me emotionally invested. That just when I got to the end, I felt like, oh man, I'm kind of sorry that we're going back into the Fitz storyline now because I just wanted this to continue. But maybe it makes me excited for the Rainwell because I'm thinking that's going to be more in the same style as this. So who knows?
Yeah, I don't know who we follow in the Rainwild Chronicles. Do you even know if it is it this
No,
cast
no.
of character? I have
I
no idea.
I like not knowing these things, uh, just being surprised. But I assume it's going to be more in the multi POV third person style, and that we might see some familiar faces. I don't know if there's a big time jump though between these things, but I am really hoping that we see some of these characters again show up in maybe some of the Fitz books, and that'd be interesting to see them from different outside perspectives. But I
Yeah.
imagine the events at least have to have wide ramifications if dragons are going to be hatching and returning like kind of en masse to the world, then that's
Yeah.
gonna affect
I
things.
remember like I remember when just the couple dragons from Farseer, I don't remember exactly how many were. It was a few, right? It was like a handful of them or something. And I remember thinking like, wow, this has got to be like some world changing stuff. And it was only like, I don't know, 4 or 5 dragons maybe. And then Tintaglia is sitting there talking about like 70
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever that actually made it to the. I was like, what is about to happen? Like,
yeah.
this is
It
crazy.
seems like they eat a lot too, so like they have to have an
Yeah.
effect on the world's ecology
Yeah.
and economics and everything. So I'll be curious to see how the events from this end up kind of creating some waves into the Fitz books, hopefully, because it's just I've felt so connected to it all. I don't want it to be done with these characters and these story events. But can we start at the beginning though? Because I want to almost run through the book because the beginning book two ended on
Yeah.
such a cliffhanger where Tintaglia is freed and Selden and Rain are trapped in the underground city chamber, and then Malta and Keki and the satrap are out on the boat, and Tintaglia is
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, I'm remembering about these little humans. They helped me out. Maybe I should go save them." And so like I was expecting book three to start that way, and it kind of does, but then Tintaglia is just thinking about so many other things, and it's like, okay, but I'll go back and save Rain and Selden, but it takes like so long for that to happen in the beginning. It just left me in such tension about what was going to happen. Like the beginning, I was so hooked, and then uh, it like, and then they cut over to other POVs like Ronica in Bingtown. And I'm like, oh my god, like let's get back to the Rainwild. Like, what is gonna happen with Selden and Rain?
Yes.
And she dragged out that opening section for maximum suspense and tension for me. Like, I saw someone on Discord, maybe it was Kyle from Red by Kyle, was being like, nothing happens in the beginning. It's just like Malta like paddling around in the water. But like I thought the beginning was just breathless and exciting, and when I just assumed Tintaglia is going to be able to rescue Malta, but then like this giant dragon and this little boat. I love how Hob made the physics of the situation really important, where it's like, oh, we can't just like a fairy tale like pick up Malta from the boat, and her and Rain are gonna happily together right in the beginning, and like the way that like the dragon couldn't save them, just had to go back and tell them where they were, and then they got picked up by the Chalcidians. Like, oh my god, this beginning was so dramatic, and the way Selden and Rain got,
I mean, like, so one of the more interesting things that I feel like Hob does with the dragon, especially with the interactions with humans, is like she like puts on display how like gross humanity can be, in the sense that they just assume everything is there for them. And Tintaglia is like, why would I help you? Like, I'm a dragon. Why would I care? Why would I care what this creature of so few breaths does? And like, so obviously to us, we're just like, dude, just go grab Malta. Like, you could just solve so many things. And she's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I've been in a freaking log for I don't know how many years. Like, let me go live my life. So that was really interesting.
Yeah. And she's what I love about Tintaglia is that it's not just like this selfish, like kingly dragon personality or queenly dragon personality. It's she has this immediate like obligation to her whole kind, where it's like, I gotta seek them out. I have this really important business to attend to, and these humans are just getting in my way right now.
It made me feel silly about caring so much about Tintaglia now, like helping this, generally speaking, small group of people in the world. Like, yes, Rain and Malta and Bingtown, and I mean, she can fly over it all in, I don't know, what, 5 minutes? But it's been our whole world for 2 whole books.
Oh like, the so scale crazy of the creatures here is so fascinating. The differences, and Matt's mentioning how Hob compared humans to flies, and like that helps to put things in perspective. It's like I might be like the tiniest bit concerned with like helping little animals and creatures, but like I'm not going to be overly concerned if if how things go for them. So that was a really good comparison for Hob to be making, to put things into the perspective, get into Tintaglia's mindset a little bit.
I love when she was talking to humans.
Yeah.
Well, even like in the council, I don't know. I don't want to jump too far ahead because I don't know what you had planned to talk about, but I guess like Selden.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He came out of nowhere.
Yes. Wasn't, and I think Hob really planned that, where she's like, okay, Selden's gonna play a major part in book 3 and like come into his own as he grows up a little bit, but like he's gonna almost be an afterthought in the first couple books, especially before they get to the Rainwild. And we're from other POVs, and I think it was very much like how they were discounting Selden as just this little boy, and he's not gonna bring any value to this tense political situation here. Like the other characters overlooked him. We as the reader probably overlooked him. And then when he starts singing out to Tintaglia and becomes, Tintaglia's bard, or did Tintaglia use a certain word to describe Selden? It seems like almost like an official kind of position, that a way that humans used to relate to the dragons.
It was like a something minstrel.
Minstrel. Oh, was it minstrel? Yeah. So like, and he's tapping into like older memories, but it seems like he's still very much like himself, and the way he always just had a very youthful excitement about new things when he came to the Rainwild, and is bold. And so he's tapping into these old memories, but he seems like he is very much himself and forming this very important role as the go-between between the humans and Tintaglia, most of whom the humans are just like really scared of Tintaglia at first. And Tintaglia is just like incensed that they would try to like, the Rainwild people would try to like, get her to go away with their little weapons.
Yeah, and I thought like Selden was used really, Dragon Singer. Selden was used really well as like a comparison to like little. I mean, he's what, 8 or 9? Like he's really young.
Yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah,
He
something like that.
like Hobb used him as a great like window into the fact that like kids know way more than we often give them credit for, and all these like adults, especially at the council, they're like talking about all these plans, and then Selden's just like, but Tintaglia is not doing that, and they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, I know what she's thinking, and they're like, no, you don't, dude. Like, just pipe down, little one. And he's just like,
yes.
She has other plans.
Yes,
we have
that
to
was
do
an
this
amazing
to get her to
scene.
help us.
That was an amazing scene where it's like the Bingtown Council just used to life a certain way, and human politics and human concerns being like at the forefront, and things being within their control, and them trying to figure out how they can use everything to their own advantage. And then the Tintaglia is just a new factor they don't understand and can't even imagine at this point until they finally see her. Like, oh, another amazing scene. Like, what an amazing scene when Tintaglia drops down by the council, and people's whole like worldviews are just like shattered in that moment.
Yeah, because they didn't even factor her in. They just were like, oh, we woke a dragon and she flew away. That's it. And they didn't, at first, they weren't even considering her being an ally to them or helping them. And it was great. Like, I don't know how I would ever sell this book to somebody. Like, there's like a dragon negotiating like political advantages for both of them. Like,
yeah.
It was wild.
Oh yeah,
she didn't care about them until they could help her. Like,
oh yeah, totally,
out the river.
Yeah, the dragons are, at least Tintaglia, they aren't shown as just some flawless, perfect, moral, ethical creature. Like, they're shown as pretty selfish. Tintaglia is at least selfish about her dragonly concerns at the beginning, and helping the serpents come up the river and hatch. And I think one of the cool kind of almost themes of this book was that both humans and dragons are best served by working together and learning from each other in how to expand our worldviews, and maybe learn how to live a little bit differently, learn from others who do things differently and think differently, and maybe combine the best aspects of both types of people and dragon. But just what Derry here mentioned, just that the dragon life cycle is taken from dragonflies. That is a great little nugget. Thank you, Derry.
I didn't know that.
Love that. I am gonna definitely look up the dragonfly life cycle now to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, because it was very unique how the dragons were supposed to become dragons.
And Derry mentioned the council still managed to have a sense of ownership over Tintaglia too. Such a great look at humanity. Yep, very, very unflinching, realistic look at humanity's controlling nature over animals, nature, other beings, other people. Yeah, totally. Matt's throwing some love towards Malta. Told me in book 1 that Malta would become my favorite character in the series. My head may have fallen on. Mine too. I could not stand Malta being her like gossipy, like cruel self in the beginning. As in her thoughts, she's feeling all these cruel thoughts towards the other people in her family, and extraordinarily self-centered and just wrapped up in her own teen drama. Yeah, Matt, I'm the same way, and I was rooting for her so hard, and just like when she's dealing with the whiny satrap and is in a life-threatening situation and is scared, but it's like really just puts on that brave face and figures things out and navigates being a Chalcidian captive. And man, the way she handles all that, it was so tense because you never knew if something terrible was going to befall her. But she like so easy to root for her to
No,
to
I feel
finally
like
yeah
I might
to
be
get to
like
safety.
I could be misunderstood or misremembering this, but I feel like in our first discussion on Ship of Magic, we were almost talking about how Malta was like on the verge of being like a caricature of just a spoiled teenager, like
Yeah,
so bad that it's like almost unrealistic, but it wasn't. Like, because I mean, some of her thoughts were super twisted, like
yeah.
really, really twisted, and I cannot believe the emotional like roller coaster that Hall took me on with Malta. Like it with so
Yeah.
many characters in this, honestly, but Malta, like I never ever in book one would have thought that I would have like loved her as a character by the end of this series.
And like without even giving us internal thoughts, like some authors they narrate kind of every internal thought and emotion that a character's having, like as they're changing or as they're coming to realizations. Like I don't think we ever were given a thought to the tune of like, oh, now I'm not superficial, I'm not going to worry about like Rain's physical appearance, like it's more about our soul connection. And like, but that was the sense I got, that that over the course of this book, like without Rain and Malta even being together or her even thinking about her like possible relationship too much, I got the sense that she had matured beyond her vain, superficial self from earlier in the series and was had found this deeper, meaning in life and deeper connection to Rain, and that if only they could come into contact again, they would, have this fantastic, deep, real, romance and love affair. And the way that Hob kept them apart for most of this book was so painful, uh, and then even more painful when they finally make
Oh
it
my god.
to meet each other, but then each of them is worried that the other is going to be like
Yeah.
grossed out by their appearance, and so they're both kind of standoffish and thinking like, oh, it's okay, like as long as they're safe, I'm happy, like, but I'm so sad that like I can't be my pristine self anymore for them. But man, when they finally like get over their miscommunication at the end, and it was so satisfying. Like, man, that is just such a great romance where we barely spent any time with them as a couple together through the series, but made me so happy the way it played out.
Yeah, and I mean like I guess Malta and Wintro and Althea, a lot of the people in this book, like, are perfect examples of how, like, my experience thus far is that she does such a good job of character development, natural character development, and she puts so much trust in the readers to just figure out that the characters are changing. And I never literally have, in any of the 6 books I've read, felt like Hobb is pushing us or giving us the answers or directly telling us Malta grew up. Like she
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
over the course of a long period of time, the reader just understands that Malta has changed because of natural, believable events in her life.
Yeah. And I'm not the biggest believer in the like the doctrine of always like show don't tell is just better. I think I enjoy getting told a lot of exposition. I do enjoy often getting told, all the characters' internal thoughts and their emotions. But it's interesting. I've had a lot of those reads earlier this year where you're often with maybe just a single first person POV and getting narrated like every single emotion and thought as it's unfolding. And I think I was just getting tired maybe of that style a little bit. And this more kind of show don't tell approach, which you'll experience with Steven Erikson because he takes it to an extreme with
Okay.
fantasy. You're given very little of characters' internal reflections and like their emotional reactions to things. So like Hobbs a nice middle ground, but I really appreciate it where it maybe just feels like you are as the reader trusted a bit more. You have to think about things a bit more. Uh, it's it's more like you're having realizations gradually with characters as they grow and change. And I'm really, as I have gone through Liveship, really appreciating that writing approach. It feels quite sophisticated and but still not overly dense. Like it's not hard to, I think,
No.
follow what's happening here. The characters' arcs, like they're all super clear, but we're not exactly just told, like you were saying, just how the characters are changing or growing up. And I just want to mention Derry threw out a question here. I don't know if we want to answer it now or just think about it for later. We could, because it's fun.
No,
How would you
I mean, I definitely
classify
had a theory about it.
the Assassin's Quest Stone Dragons now? I'm curious. I have almost no clue what to think about it, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I don't know either, but so I'm assuming that it's the way I was thinking about it was because so obviously we learn about how they have to get up the Rainwild River to the cocooning grounds to like the muddy, marshy area, and then they use their saliva to like form a cocoon that has to harden. And I just kind of assumed that the dragons born in a different part of the world had to do the cocooning a different way. Like maybe it wasn't actually stone. I don't know. I just kind of assumed like different natural environment. They figured out a different way to get into that cocoon phase because they weren't in the Rainwild area. I don't know.
I like it. I don't know if was it even in this book or the previous book. I'm now, it maybe doesn't even matter, but when they were talking about how the elderlings would like you can help me out here, but elderlings would, when they were about to die, they would upload their memories into like a stone dragon. It would become animated for like a couple days. Like they would fly out of the chamber and they could be dragons for a couple days before they died. Do you remember something like this?
No, but that kind of makes sense.
Like it was, I don't even remember where that was mentioned. It was very brief, but I was like, oh, this is really cool world building. And that seems like it's related to the stone dragons possibly. But then I was thinking, is that what, do they just become stone again? And can they be reanimated? And is it also temporary if they get reanimated? Like I had lots of questions. And yeah, Derry, don't feel like you have to enlighten us now. We can see what's going on.
I mean, like there seems to be this theme of like, I don't know, to me, like through, especially, I did not think this in Farseer because I thought I knew what was kind of going on in Farseer, but we get a lot more answers in Liveship and still generate like way more questions than I could have thought of. But it seems like dragons are almost used as like this being, this race that like is responsible for like carrying the memories of themselves and the world. Like they know what has happened for centuries and centuries of time. And they have a pretty dark, negative mindset towards humans because humans, they loved the elderling race because the elderlings seem to have like epitomized the way that dragons and humans can live together. Like they designed their cities so that dragons could access the cities. They gave them landing spots. They really revered dragons, and the dragons really respected the elderling race. But then Tintaglia starts talking and she's like, humans have ruined everything. Like these measly little cities that you guys think so highly of, like, can't even support a dragon landing. How would you design a city not to support a dragon landing? Like,
but that's so interesting when Tintaglia is having all those thoughts. Like it was not overly aware of like the situation and a little bit unkind towards humans, because like Tintaglia is not thinking about how there have been no dragons here for how many ever hundreds of years. And it's like, why would humans be thinking about dragons? Like she's showing off a kind of self-centered kind of perspective, not doing perspective taking of the humans. So it's like, why would they design cities if dragons haven't been around that would take them into account? Like, why would they know how to interact with dragons and to show courtesy if they have no memory of being with dragons? Like, she's not fully taking into account all the facts of the situation or doing perspective taking. So it kind of shows off Tintaglia like almost like they're a kid, like they're a youth who's not doing a lot of perspective taking. Like, and Tintaglia just hatched, so I don't have a feel for how old, like how many years Tintaglia was actually alive, but in a sense, maybe Tintaglia is like a kid dragon.
Well, yeah, she even says like has that conversation with Rain at one point where Rain's just like, "Wait, you're not done growing?" And she's like, "Of course not." And he's like, "How long will you grow?" And she's like, "As long as I live, I suppose." And I was just like, "Whoa, like you're just gonna keep eating and getting bigger?" Like, this is wild.
Are the Elderlings? Do we get lots of hints about like what they are? So like, Tintaglia called Rain and Malta Elderlings by the end, and so like being near the dragons seems to physically alter the humans to become this like hybrid race, I guess, which are the Elderlings. And she's like, "Oh, now you're gonna live much longer," which was cool for me to hear, because I'm like, yeah, like give them long lives so they appear throughout the rest of the series. But like that was cool that they became Elderlings, so it's not like a dead race, but it's just this hybrid race that can reform again, and they can give birth to future Elderlings. So like, I don't know, that was all cool.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense, because I guess this kind of ties back into like what you were just talking about with Tintaglia being a little bit closed-minded, but like, I don't know, in her perspective, dragons living, I don't know how long they live, hundreds of years. I mean, I don't know how long dragons and Elderlings haven't been around in humans' existence, but it's been long enough for humans to completely disregard them and forget about them.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that the Elderlings have disappeared, because, like you said, it's kind of a race that happened because humans were so close in contact with dragons that they changed. So maybe
and there was some kind of extinction event. And there was some kind of like,
oh, was there?
I
don't remember that.
We get hints that what killed all the dragons at some point was some kind of giant asteroid hit, or like volcanic explosion, something that was like a dinosaur level extinction event. I mean, we get just like little hints of memories from that moment, I think, at various points throughout the series. Whereas like, I can't even remember what book. Maybe Derry can help us. Like, but we get little hints of like ash falling and the city being buried, and like just the Elderling city there, and the dragons being in complete chaos as like something they don't understand just happened. And the serpents, as Derry says, the serpents were in the sea for scores of years, minimum 400 years. Wow. Yeah. And they're worried that like this is it for them. Like they're not going to be able to remember anything after this season. So like the tension is just so high with whether like they can figure out their way back to the cocooning grounds. And like, I loved that, like the serpents arc of this whole series, and just became clearer and clearer. And the tension was so high by the end, whether the human drama would allow the humans to help them, and the way that it eventually played out, where the humans have to play a role and like make the river deep enough, and the dragons couldn't just rely on themselves. They had to rely on the humans, and they're what do they call the serpent who has the memories? She who remembers, like
she who remembers.
Yeah. She was giving them back their memories. So that was important. They needed the dragon guide, Like all these different pieces had to come together. It's like Wintrow saving She Remembers, and Rain and Selden and Malta freeing Tintaglia, and then just the live ships also, and in their part in helping the serpents or leading them astray, in some cases with the is oh my god, did the person the entity, the dragon that took over Vivacia, did they have a name? I forget if oh my god, they did have a name. What was that?
Yeah.
Oh my god, what was
I
that
don't
name of
remember what
the
it is now either. That's crazy.
but they
Someone will
were
tell
just
us.
yeah, they were just like keeping the serpents close to them.
Bolt.
Bolt, yeah.
That's
Oh,
it.
great name, yeah. Man, Bolt was so sinister, and it's like, man, Bolt's just using the serpents to play out their bargain with Kenneth.
Yes.
Oh man, and the serpents are like all conflicted about it. They don't just want to rampantly, kill and destroy things based on taking orders from a human. And so like when that all comes to a head eventually, like we're jumping ahead a little bit, but like the convergence where Althea and Brashian on the Paragon are coming,
Oh man.
and Kenneth's like, all right, I have to sync all these memories from my traumatic past, and Paragon's gonna be okay with it, and I'm gonna use the serpents here, and I'll just be a clean break, and like that convergence where it was the serpents kind of like morals and their inner lives and complexity that led them to question their orders, and to not just destroy the Paragon and kill all the people, that like that like was so important. Just oh my god, what a rich convergence we had there of so many different elements, from the under the sea stuff playing such an important role, and then all the crazy human drama that was going on, and the live ship drama that was going on above the surface of the water at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was devastating to like as we began to understand more about what live ships were and like what the serpents were, like it was so devastating to just like singularly see each live ship realize that they were dragons and that they would never fly again.
Yeah,
It was so
yeah.
sad, like because they would talk to the serpents and then like they'd be like, "Oh my god, like this is why I've been so conflicted as a live ship for so long. Like I can never fly again."
Yep, I mean the
I
Kendry
literally
seemed
felt
to, yeah.
sad for
Oh
these
yeah,
ships.
yeah, totally. It's like, yeah, Cobb gave them some really touching thoughts about like they can relating the sails to wings and things, and not being able to fly. But some live ships didn't seem to have too many memories of being a dragon, like Ophelia. It's
Yeah.
like just didn't really remember being a dragon, but the Kendry was like seems really depressed and affected by remembering their past, and so just the mix of reactions was so fascinating. And I was just trying to think about what Derry was getting at here. Remember how quickly Vivacia warmed to Kenneth? Consider how he spoke to her and compared to how Spelden spoke to Tintaglia. Yeah, I was
Wow.
wondering about that. It felt like Kenneth like understood how to interact with a live ship better than someone who had never interacted with one. But I didn't really think about it much at the time when he first came onto the Vivacia. But it makes so much sense now that though he grew up with a live ship and interacting with one, that he understood kind of what interacting with one was like. And so I feel like he used that to try to, get on Vivacia's good side. But I think Derry's getting at something else here, where like there's maybe a specific way of like talking to dragons that taps into something in the past that kind of warms them up to you more.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like what I was saying with the Elderling race. Like, even when Selden was talking in a lot of the scenes to Tintaglia, she's almost just like, "Oh, thank you, cute little minstrel." Like, but she really respected how he was respecting her, and it's almost like dragons thrive on
Yeah.
on just
Yes.
being
Yes.
you know, like the way that Selden was just worshiping her, like they thrive on
Yes.
worship.
Oh, that's it. Yes. Yes.
And I don't think
Yes.
that
Yes.
Kenneth understood why it was working. I think because we get his inner monologue, he's just thinking of it like a like a womanizer. Like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is just a woman that I have to win over. What would
Yeah.
work if I was trying to win a woman over with Edda trying to just screw things up? So he's literally like worshiping the ship as a
Yeah.
woman,
Yeah.
but actually it's working because the worship from that dragons get is what makes them thrive. So like I think he, just like anything that Kenneth does, he accidentally somehow does the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Oh, you're total. I think you hit it. You hit it right, the nail on the head with that. Yeah. Talking to dragons need to be full of overblown praise. Yeah, you're right. Selden does that repeatedly throughout this book, and it always like calms Tintaglia down or gets her to like want to help out. And even if other characters or if it seems like it's going overboard, like that, it's like, oh, it's too obvious you're buttering them up, but like that does work with the
Yeah,
dragons.
it's almost it's. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like cringy. It's not cringy when Selden does it because he's
Yeah.
like a 9-year-old boy.
Yeah.
It's like adorable when he does it, but Kenneth, you're just like, oh, dude, like, why is this working? Like, this
Yes.
shouldn't work.
Yes. 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 Oh, totally. Oh man. Yep. All right. Is it time? It might be time to switch gears and talk about the other main thread. We were chatting about the Rainwild thread. We can come back to some of those characters later, but for me, the real human drama, like heart of the series and the book, has been the convergence of Althea and Brashen and Paragon, including Amber with that, and with Kenneth and Wintro and Edda on the Vivacia. Just all of these characters, their dramas, their connections to the live ships, the convergence. It was such an intense emotional arc of with all of them in this book, and with one of the most spectacular reveals I've ever gotten in literature, in fantasy, that reframed how I felt about the entire series and would completely reshape or reread. But man, learning that Kenneth was the boy Ludluck, grew up with Paragon, that they were
There's so many hints, and I
they were
never picked up
bonded.
on it.
Yeah, neither did I. Yeah, they were bonded, and then Kenneth was, on the ship as he gets traumatized by Egrat and sexually assaulted, repeatedly beaten up, emotionally traumatized with how he tortured his dad, tortured his mom, and then through it all, Paragon's there, just comforting Kenneth, taking in the pain, the memories, the blood, like protecting him. Oh man, I'm getting emotional just thinking of talking about it right now.
The second half of this book was really heavy, really, really heavy. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like Derry said, like he was literally killed on more than one occasion, and like Paragon saved him.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting point. It's like at various points, and especially since we're in Kenneth's POV, which because he's so able to put on a strong facade of being like the gentleman pirate and of doing so many like good feats for freeing slaves and helping others. And Wintro is kind of like conflicted with all that and taken in because he senses that even while Kenneth does a lot of things that have good consequences, that there's something off or missing inside, and he can't put his finger on it. But Hob actually reveals that he had died multiple times, and Paragon kind of maybe revived him. And I think there's a sense that Hob was giving off, or hints, or I don't know, but that Kenneth's not just like a sociopath who like feels no empathy for others, or who's just a complete narcissist. Like there might be some level of emptiness there because of like him actually dying and being revived, and he's maybe almost like, you know, something like the live ships themselves, like a bit of an empty vessel, or something, that he's not all there. And man, it does maybe go to explain, you know, his personality, or it doesn't absolve him of his ultimate irredeemable sin, because it seems like in the end that was his willful choice to do that to Althea. But up until that point, Hobb had me hoping that Kennit could have a redemption arc. But then once he goes over the cliff of doing something so irredeemable, then, you know, it made it so that maybe the arc of him, and, you know, dying and then being taken into Paragon is it just closes the loop in a way that for Kennit and Paragon that felt right, and was just so emotional and hard to take. And yeah.
No, I mean, I guess this is kind of skating past a lot of the like reunion relationships that we haven't talked about yet. But I mean, there's so Hobb through like the whole second half of this book, especially with Kennit as a character singularly and Althea as a character singularly, and obviously the events that happened between them, like it is such a unflinching, to use a Philip Chase word, look at how trauma affects somebody for years to come. Like, I mean, we see it with Cirilla, we see it with Kennit, and we see it with Althea, especially how sexual molestation, essentially rape, has lifelong effects on people and the way that they think and the way that they operate. And until the event that happened, which was the rape, obviously was like, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever read. Actually read, being in Kennit's head for that, was until that happened, Kennit was, and he still is, one of the most amazing characters I think I've read in a long time. But realizing that he was traumatized by Igrot and how Paragon got him through that, and how Paragon loved Kennit regardless of his faults because he was such a broken person, seemed so realistic. And whenever like Brashen and Althea finally, you know, understood what was happening, they were just like, I don't understand why you love Kennit. And Paragon's just like, you don't have to understand it. I can't really explain it, but he gave me all these feelings and he needs me to get through life. Like, their relationship was so interesting to read about because Paragon knew everything that Kennit felt inside. So Paragon was the only person that really understood why Kennit was the way that he was. And he was really just a scared little boy that had to put on this facade to get through life. And he just kept thinking, like, if I get this, then I'll be happy. If I get this, then I'll be happy. If I get this, then I'll be happy. And we see, like, you know, even in the previous books, he's just like, people seem to think that I can't do things because I want to, but I can. It's just like the way that he deals with stuff is so twisted, and we see why. Finally, we see why.
And it was so touching, the flashbacks or the thoughts we get about when Kennit was young. Like, it seems like they did have a special bond, and like Kennit was the real only person who had love for Paragon, and who was, you know, was close to Paragon, and Paragon, like, you know, choosing to take Kennit's pain and memories, just so touching. Like that stuff, so touching. And Derry mentioned chapter 26 is brutal despite being in their heads. There's nothing graphic. I did appreciate the lack of actual graphic detail, because the just the knowledge of what was going on without that was more than enough to get everything across. And the confusion and trauma, the way that it feels like Kennit is just playing out like a cycle of trauma and is almost trapped within that cycle. And you want people in books, you want people in real life to be able to break out of those cycles of trauma. But realistically, I think a lot of people get stuck in them, and it's not their fault for what happened to them. And then if they don't get help to break out of that cycle of trauma, they'll just probably end up repeating it, or reliving it, or being miserable with it. So it's a really heavy thematic exploration that Hobb did here. And Althea too, like you mentioned, like she had her own experience with sexual assault on the ship, like at a young age, when someone was taking advantage of her. And it doesn't get brought up much, or she doesn't seem to think about it much, but maybe a trauma that's more like hidden under the surface that's still affecting her. And then when she has this experience, and then is back with Brashen again, and is like standoffish with him a little bit physically, like she doesn't want to associate Brashen with Kennit, but she almost can't help it. Like that was just so heartbreaking, and also really realistic. And Brashen thinks like it's his fault, and he didn't know what happened. And man, when Paragon was like, this isn't your pain to deal with, like it's mine at the end, like, oh my goodness, so emotional. And just love Paragon here throughout. What an incredible character.
Honestly,
yeah, one of my faves for sure.
One of the things that was sadly the most realistic, but was like one of the most heartbreaking things, was nobody believing Althea about what happened.
Oh my goodness!
Like
that was
like
that
literally
was such a painful chapter where Kennit was gaslighting her, and everyone was believing Kennit. And
I was so mad at Wintrow. Wintrow's literally actively helping Kennit, like in this battle. And
oh my god, so hard to read.
And even Jack, like nobody, like this just happened, and she's being, like you said, gaslighted as being absolutely insane. For even saying these things, because Kennit had gone so far and had been so successful in getting his crew and his people and Wintrow to believe in him as a person and a captain, that he's just like, you can keep acting crazy. People are just going to think you're crazy. And people did think she was crazy. And I was so angry that nobody believed. She had to have felt so alone in that moment.
Except Edda. I was like, I was such a huge Edda fan. Well, I've always been a big Edda fan throughout the series, but like Edda believed her, and it was like, oh my god, thank God someone believes her. I just wanted her to convey that to Althea somehow, but eventually that happened, and Wintrow then believed Althea, eventually maybe convinced by Edda. So thank goodness for Edda and her wisdom and ability to see beyond what her initial biases might have been leading her towards thinking. Another amazing character, Edda, where it's like she could see Kennit's faults. She didn't even believe his lies a lot of the time, but like we love who we love sometimes, and she still to the end, I think, felt a deep love to Kennit. What a great character. So many touching things going on with her.
There were so many examples of just extremely conflicting emotional relationships between many of the characters throughout this entire thing. I mean, like sexual relationships, family relationships. Like there was so many conflicting, and they were all believable. Like, you could understand why. I mean, I still was so mad at Wintrow the most in this last part, that he just didn't believe his aunt. Like he was so far gone from sticking up for family and like what was right as a priest, as a training priest, that he just was like, I don't know. It made me so mad.
I was definitely heavily empathizing with Wintrow throughout this section, because like he's this teenage boy who's been going through an identity crisis the entire series, and he finally like felt like he had resolved some of it and been like, okay, I can be Kennit's priest and help him, change the world for the better. And then he's confronted with, as he's just settling into that kind of like identity, he's confronted with this horrible thing that he doesn't want to deal with. and that'll further confuse him. So I could feel, so much empathy and compassion for Wintrow going through this, and you're right. I was pissed at him that he wasn't like fully just on Althea's side or believing her, but Hob here was super realistic, because I think like based on human nature and the way victims often don't get believed in our real life here, and how like people have biases toward people, like can it present such this different facade than what's going on inside, that made sense that his crew and even Wintrow would doubt that he would do that, or Vivacia too. Like if so, I thought at least like Vivacia would be able to sense like the truth of everything, but how even she was like, oh, it could have been just a dream. Like, man, that was so rough that even like Vivacia was doubting Althea and couldn't just discern the truth. Like, rough.
And then there was a lot of parallels between so in terms of like the aftermath of people going through an event like this, we see, because they're, obviously being raped is an extreme loss of control and power. And a lot of times what we see happen in real life is people wanting to obsessively control everything they can control, because they felt such a loss of control in these traumatic events. And we see it with, even though we didn't get nearly as like in depth of a exploration into what happened to Cirilla, she's doing the same thing. Like she is trying to control everything in Bingtown, and not really successfully, but like she's over there trying, and you can see it. She doesn't trust anybody anymore after that.
Yeah, and she's like, and there's echoes of being of her being like dominated by men, with the way that Road Cairn is kind of using his physical presence and aggressiveness to try to manipulate her and control her.
And she hates that she can't stop it. Like she can't get herself to stand up to him.
That she ends up allying with Ronica, who like helps her be a little more self-aware of the situation, maybe, and of her own trauma. Like the way that she then appreciates Ronica's help and wisdom, and like helps her escape. I love that scene, by the way, where like Ronica thinks she's being so secretive, listening by the door, and like Cirilla knows that she's there, and she's hoping that Ronica like gets the warning message and goes. I love that. I didn't like that Cirilla was just like, working at cross purposes with Ronica like last book, but like or at the beginning of this one, I can't even remember where things are blurred.
Yeah.
But the way that Cirilla ends up kind of outmaneuvering Road Cairn, and that was nice to see her, break free from, that kind of male dominated kind of position, and use her cleverness and allies and politicking to not just fall prey to Road Cairn there. Oh, that was a very satisfying plot line.
Yeah.
No,
it was, Ronica doesn't get enough love, I feel like.
Oh my god, like it was like very tense in the beginning, where she's just like living in her shell of a house, and someone's like, people are coming by to rob stuff, and then it was Serwyn Trell of all people that was coming by to like, he still thinks he has a shot with Malta maybe, and he's like right, like he's leaving stuff for Malta. Poor Serwyn. That seems like a good kid.
He does.
But man, like it was cool to see how like other people in the town helping Ronica and being on like the side of the Vestrits, and not falling complete prey to like the plots of the new traders or Cirilla or whatever. But like Sissy the Tenairas like helping, and Greg Tenaira, and then Serwyn helping, and then they escape to like the Three Ships folk, and you're like, oh my god, this is opening up beyond the scope of what I thought. Like Like this is like a now bring in some social commentary on social class and immigration and like slums and like wow, the Bingtown traders have been very kind of had tunnel vision about like promoting their own interests, but not really doing enough to bring in the other people that live in Bingtown that are all important to the community. And that was another really great theme of this, where it's like Bingtown can start anew and be more inclusive and get everyone's voices and not be so socially stratified and rigid. Just I love that stuff. Whereas like the three
with
ships,
the three ship traders or whatever,
and even like everyone who's the slaves, the former slaves, and it's like, oh, Greg Tenira's becoming romantically involved with one of the three ships people. And I just love that whole kind of through line of this book too, whereas it's like this town's becoming a little more enlightened, and as everyone has to work together and realize that we want to make progress, we don't need to continue the same way we did before, where the Bingtown traders are just ruling over everyone. Maybe they didn't know what was best for everyone. Yeah.
Well, even like the Bingtown traders, because I mean, we up to this point are set up to just feel sympathy for them because they are like under the looming foot of Jamalia, and so like that's just our main focus. And then we realize, like in that moment, like you were saying, like Bingtown is not really all that high and mighty because there's literally like the three ship families have just been literally marginalized and pushed to the edge of Bingtown to live in the woods. And then the guy, I forget what his name was, one of the leaders of the three ship traders, was like, we've been here this whole time, but we don't get included in anything. So we literally live in the woods. And they were the ones that ended up saving Ronica and Rach whenever they fled. And Rach was just like, come with me, I know where we can go. She took them to the three ship traders, right? And they took Ronica in when she looked like literally like she was living on the streets.
And it was also Rach, the former slave, who had been secretly making connections with lots of other people in the town and three ships and former slaves. And just it was so cool how lots of minor characters here played truly crucial roles for the way everything played out. There's no throwaway characters here in Hob books, and they feel, even if they don't get a lot of page time, they're so fully formed on the page. You feel like they're a complex individual or entity in terms of like the live ships. And Derry brings up Amber. That's what a great character, a complete mystery to me, an enigma throughout this series, but someone I felt very attached to. Like they seem like Amber has such like a compassionate soul and always trusting of Paragon, even when Paragon seems unstable and dangerous. And just so touching, all the stuff around recarving Paragon. And then we got a little hints about Amber having her own individual life before all this, and recarving Paragon in the image of like someone that she used to be romantically involved with. I don't know, but
I have some theories.
I read Farseer like 4 years ago, so my memory for everything from Farseer is not great. So like, go ahead with your theory since you read it much more recently.
Well, I read it very recently, like the beginning of this year. And so Amber, like, my theory on Amber, because you had a very good one before we knew a lot more about Amber, that she was a figurehead, like an ex-figurehead. But that was before we even knew anything about what live ships were. So that was a very believable theory. Amber, I think, is the same race as the Fool. Because remember, the Fool talks about, like, you might not, I don't know, because it's been a while since you've read it, but the Fool
refresh my memory, like,
the Fool talks about like where he came from, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of similarities because Amber speaks in these like prophecies that don't make sense to anybody.
Yeah.
Like all the interactions the Fool had with Fitz early on and other people Fitz would like walk away and be like, "That dude's weird." Like, but then like later, like the Fats suffices. Do you remember that line that he told Fitz, and then later Fitz like figured out with the dog what the fool was telling him? I feel like Amber like has this intuition with people, and at the end of Farseer, towards the end of Farseer, we see like the fool has like this ridiculous talent for carving realistic puppets out of wood.
Yeah,
while
yeah.
he's like living in this hut. And Amber is like amazing at carving wood and speaks in like weird prophecies that leaves people feeling like weird. I don't know. Like, I feel like they're the same race of people.
Yeah, and Derry, I had the theory, especially because Hobbs seemed to be very intentionally describing Amber physically with like descriptors that you would use for wood, and like Amber's coloring or just other adjectives that seemed like would be how you would describe things made out of wood, but used for Amber. So I'm like, she seems to be sending all these signals that she was actually like made of wood, or at one point made of wood. So I thought she might have been like an actual like figurehead that had been removed from a ship maybe at some point and was now out and about.
But then think of all the weird stuff that people say about the fool's complexion.
Yeah.
People always say how weird the fool looks too.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like they're somehow they're from the same place, but I don't know where the fool's from.
Yeah. I like your theory that they're very much related. Is that the phrase there?
Yeah, that's the phrase.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. But oh my God, Derry, like, oh wait, where was it? The line that Paragon said to Amber.
Oh man.
Paragon had so many moments in the series that are just like touching, because Paragon seems to have this underlying just innocence and sensitivity about him. And so like when Paragon first sails, it was just such a wonderful moment when first sailed again. And now when he told Amber, "Give me a face you could love," like, oh, just so touching. Yeah, what a great line. Bravo to Hob on that, and just everything to do with Paragon. Like I was definitely getting worried with Paragon, because Paragon seemed like when Paragon like killed that sailor, and he was being influenced by who is that nasty Lavoy? Lavoy, is that?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
When Paragon was being like really negatively influenced by Lavoy and killed that guy, and I was really worried for Paragon, and like he has two dragons like beings inside of him also. There's like
so much going on with
Paragon. and his own like consciousness too, which is separate from them. And then he's dealing with when we didn't know about it, he's dealing with this whole traumatic past that that Egret caused for him, and being promising Kenneth that he would basically like sink down into the sea and stay there and leave his memories behind. And then he felt guilty that he couldn't fulfill that promise to Kenneth. And now he's developing relationships with Amber and Brash and Althea, and now he's heading toward Kenneth, and he's like, oh, now I have these competing loyalties to different people that are all good. I don't want anyone to get hurt, but I made this promise to Kenneth. Man, there's so much going on with Paragon, and it was so deep and touching. And I was so happy that like Lavoy ended up getting off the ship, and like,
yeah,
and like I was so pissed at Brashen and Althea that they just let Lavoy cause chaos on their ship just because he's the first mate. It's like, dude, what's worse, letting a first mate destroy the whole morale of the ship and your figurehead and like cause chaos, or like upsetting the balance of like high power on the ship for like a brief time as you kick him off and like reset? I just couldn't believe that they were like, they knew Lavoy was like so dangerous to the ship, and they were like, they're worried about, I don't even know what, like the precedent of undoing like the normal ship's hierarchy. I don't know, but it was so rough that they were just like hoping Lavoie would come around. And like for a moment too, I was like, oh, maybe when Brashen established his really firm like authority over Lavoie, I thought maybe for a moment that like he might fall in line and be redeemed, but that was not to be.
No, I mean, like, so the whole so many people. Yeah, Paragon went through so much. I guess leading up to, so first of all, the plot events that had to develop like in the background, because we knew that there had to be all these reunions. I didn't know if they were all going to happen at the same time like they did, but the plot events that had to happen. So like obviously, Malta had to get the satrap somehow to Jamalia by negotiating with these Chalcidians.
Yes.
And then where was the Vivacia going? Like how like they were all.
Oh, good question. Okay, I think the Vivacia.
So the Paragon was chasing Vivacia, and then
but what was the Vivacia doing in the beginning of like this book or the middle of this book? Like Kenneth was.
I'm trying to remember.
Like I think they went to Bingtown or Divvytown, and Kenneth was like he did his whole thing of reorganizing Divvytown and
yes,
and setting them up to be more successful. And then he was traveling around with his serpents. He just wanted, I think, to be just this all-powerful pirate lord who controlled.
Oh, I know what happened.
Who controlled the serpents?
Yeah. So Malta was on the Chalcidian ship to go to Jamalia to get the satrap back there, but she couldn't be overt about it. She had to figure out a way to convince the Chalcidian captain to get to Jamalia. And then it just so happened the Vivacia saw the Chalcidian ship, not knowing who was on it, and tried to take it. Right?
Oh yeah, and then all the other
Jamalians realized the satrap was on it. So then Kenneth was like, okay, this is a huge trading chip. And then meanwhile, this whole time, the Paragon ship was trying to get to Vivacia. So like that is how all these had to converge.
and it was Kenneth's other pirate ship captained by like Red and
the Marietta,
the foreign players. They are the one that found Malta. Okay, that was all cool and fun.
That's right. And the serpents. That's the part I was missing.
Which part? Vivacia was going to herd the serpents to the rain wilds and encountered the Chalcidian vessel on their way. Oh yeah, so Kenneth was like, okay, he made that promise where he's gonna have control of the serpents with Bolt as long as he does whatever Bolt asks at the right time. And I'm like, Kenneth's really not planning to follow through on that promise. Like Bolt should be a little more careful about this situation, about this promise. But like Kenneth was like, okay, at the eventual time, I agree to do whatever you want. So I think Bolt was actually planning on maybe helping the serpents at that point and doing right by them. But Bolt is like, I need Kenneth's help. And so I promised him that we would help him. And so I'm just directing the serpents to do whatever Kenneth asks. And then separately, I don't remember exactly how they ended up going to that key island, but Paragon leads Brashen and Althea to Key Island, where they pick up. Wait, how did that happen? Yeah, I don't even remember. They picked up Kenneth's mom and Kyle, which was wild, by the way. Like when they are going toward, like I have no clue how that's gonna go down. Like, and then Kenneth's mom ended up just wanting to come with them, and like she brought like Paragon's logbooks. That was really great.
But meanwhile, this whole time, Paragon hadn't yet revealed that he needed to get back to Kenneth for the reasons he needed. Brashen and Althea and that crew didn't know really why Paragon was all of a sudden so willing to help get to the Vivacia. But now Paragon realized Kenneth is within reach. And I think Paragon knew Kenneth probably wasn't going to get out of this somehow. I don't know. if they're like mentally tied somehow. Paragon seemed to know that Kenneth was probably pretty close to death and knew that Kenneth just needed to die on his decks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And but man, the how it all comes together with even bringing back like Kyle, and that was really something where I was so curious how like Kyle's being in captivity as a prisoner was going to change him, but like it just like fully broke him, but not to the point where he like gave up his previous like personality. Like he was still just so angry at Wintro and Althea and just like a shell of a person. And that was tough. I'm glad he didn't get too much page time, because every time he was on the page or like interacting with other characters, it was rough.
I was so mad that Haw
yeah.
was trying to get us to feel sympathetic towards him, because he was so beaten and so like he literally like was like shaking.
Yeah,
like he couldn't like it was so hard to read that part.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad like Malta and Kefria, the people who like had some love and warm feelings for the old Kyle, like I'm kind of glad they didn't have to, see him in that final state, and that they could think that he died bravely, going down fighting against the pirates or Jamelia. But man, that like I none of this stuff towards the end was like felt predictable. Like I just had no clue how it was all gonna play out. Like them, like I felt like I knew that the Key Island stuff, or like Kyle was gonna come back into play. I had no clue how, or just like seeing how it all converged was just absolutely crazy. With like the part I didn't expect was like these Jamalian noble like military ships also coming into play and being like the ones that are just trying to like kill everyone else, kill the pirates, like and take back control of the satrap, resulting in just a really tense like fighting scene. Like Hob doesn't do many action scenes, but when she does, like they are top notch and tense and brutal. And like I didn't know like who was gonna come out of this thing alive. And Rain is like fighting for Malta, and then even at one point like it seems to want to defend the satrap, because Rain thinks he's seeing Malta being like affectionate toward the satrap, so he's like, oh, I guess she spent all that time with satrap, like she's now in love with the satrap. And like I felt like Rain is trying to save the satrap at the end, because he thought Malta
then how about how like whenever they actually all reunite like as a family, I could just picture like if this was like a movie or a TV show, like the expressions on Althea and Wintro's faces as they're like, wait, Malta is literally like the aide to the satrap of Jamelia? Like, what is going on right now? Like, imagine that. Like,
yes. Oh, and you know what was cool about that is like Hob has like a scene where all of those brothers, sisters, aunts, like Althea, Wintro, and Malta, they all have time to just like tell each other their tales and like what's been going on. Like that was so cool. Like I feel like most epic fantasy authors, they don't give the characters like time or space to actually catch everyone up about like what's been going on. Like, where it was like oh, like they told each other like their full tales, because like it is almost so unbelievable what everyone got up to in this like brief amount of time. And like certainly the tale of like what happened in the Rainwild was nuts. Like where they freed the dragon, like she's out with the satrap, like and gets captured by the Chalcidians, like that's nuts, and becomes basically like the satrap's companion in all but name. Like and I love how Malta, like when people call her like the satrap's heart companion, she's like, no, I'm not. Like I'm a big town trader. And then like Wintro's tale is nuts of like, being, branded into slavery on his own father's ship, and then being captured by pirates and becoming, the prophet of the pirate king. Like they had so many insane things to tell each other, and they all like finally get the chance to do that. That was a really satisfying thing of like these family members getting closer by being in this crazy situation and telling it to each
Yeah,
other.
and that conversation like made me realize like when they sat down to like go over it, I was just like it gave me a minute to breathe because we had gotten so used to where all these character arcs are. So it took me back to like when all of these characters left each other, how little of
Yeah,
anything had happened yet. Like I was just like, "Oh my god, like they have all been through so much stuff since
so
then."
much. Yes, so much. Derry thinks Hob wasn't aiming for sympathy for Kyle, almost pointing out how pathetic he was. That may be, but I think whenever you see someone who's been through just so much, even if they were, not too deserving of sympathy, it almost can't be avoided. Like they're just so
Yeah,
pitiful, so pathetic, where it's like, oh, this person that I hated, like let me. And Althea almost went through that on the page where she's like, oh my god, I don't even feel hatred towards Kyle anymore, even though he did, sent my life into a horrible tailspin and did so many bad things. It's like I just feel
I
pity for
guess
you at
pity
this
is a
moment.
better word than
Yeah,
sympathy. Like, because like the
yeah,
whole time you're reading this book, like you obviously want Kyle to get his comeuppance, and then like I guess Hobb just kind of took away the joy in that
yeah, yeah. It
because
wasn't
he
even.
was
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
so
yeah,
like I just wanted him to get like I don't even know what, but whenever we had to like read about how physically mangled he became to the point where he like was like almost inarticulate and literally shaking because he had
yeah.
received so much like traumatic like beatings. I just it took the satisfaction away partially.
And what Derry's saying, never a moment of empathy for Kyle. I love it. I love the savageness. Yeah, I
I
hated
hated him
Kyle
all the way
so
through, all the
much.
way through.
In He got so much page time in book one. Like it always was so hard seeing how he was controlling his family members in such terrible ways and veering the family towards destruction and towards being slavers. Like, oh, it's so horrible. But like, I, I'm so glad though that he was off the screen for like most of books 2 and 3 because
Yeah.
his character was more of a one note character and not one that underwent a lot of change or growth, and it was so we got our taste of Kyle, and then I think Hobb really put all these other characters on center stage who are more multifaceted and complex and did experience character arcs and growth and change. So I like what she did with Kyle in the end, and just so fascinating. Like she does unexpected things, Hobb, where you might expect like, oh, Kyle was stashed away on this island, like, oh, maybe he's gonna end up escaping and killing like Kenneth's mom, and he's gonna feel sorry that he like left him alive, or that Kyle's gonna play some bigger role in the plot. But like, it just didn't play out, in a normal cliched way or predictable way where Kyle was freed, but he didn't really change too much, and he's still his bitter self, and then he kind of just gets cut down unceremoniously, like just the way Hobb did it all, not cliche, not predictable, just uh, but
Yeah, it was very uneventful. Like he just got shot with arrows.
yeah. Yep, he was so manipulative.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just seemed to thrive on being able to manipulate everyone around him and control them. We haven't talked about Kefria too much. I guess she out of all of the main characters and POV characters didn't get too much to do in this one, but I did, I think, just appreciate returning to her every so often and being like, wow, she's in this terrified position. All of her kids are off. She doesn't know if they're alive for most of the time. They're doing very dangerous things. Like her husband, she doesn't know if he's alive. Like Kefri is going through a lot in this one, and she was still able to keep things together and kind of become independent. She had a really cool arc too, where it's like she was thinking about how if Kyle came back, like she wouldn't want to give up all of the
Yeah.
duties of like being the lead political person for the family and being the
Yep.
taking on the economic duties. Like, so she didn't get too much page time, I think, here, have the most dramatic arc, but I thought it was still, I really appreciated it. Still deep and
We
meaningful.
saw a lot of like internal growth from Kefria because even in the situation where like she was willing to undergo that journey, to, I forget exactly what she agreed to do, like when she was talking to the council, but wasn't she gonna go like under the cover of some kind
Yeah,
of
she was gonna be a
disguise?
spy for the Rain
Right.
Wild. Yeah.
We see her like willing to be taking initiative and being like, having some autonomy. But it just so happened that the events of the book never like led her to actually have to do those things because what Selden was found, right? Like Selden and Rain returned. So she never actually had to go do anything. Um I don't know, like we saw internally, like you said, she was like, I don't think if Kyle came back that I could just hand over. I think I'm better at this than
Yeah.
he would be. Like she actually said that. And we never would have heard her say stuff like that in the beginning.
Oh, Arliss with a great comment here. It's almost like someone forgot to give Hob the fantasy trope rule book. Fitz, Malta, Paragon, all incredibly off trope heroes. Yeah, add Wintro to that. Add Kenneth as an off trope antagonist. Yeah, just it feels so unique of a series
Yeah.
and the way of writing character arcs completely. And Derry says, "Oh, and it's wonderful. Yes, indeed. It's so thought provoking. Like, it's not the most escapist fantasy I read. Like, I read some where I'm just like, this. I am like escaping into a more simplified or like transcendent kind of like secondary world or version of our reality where." I can almost escape the heaviness of our reality and its complexity a little bit, and I enjoy those reads and doing that. But this feels a little bit different, where it's making you think maybe more deeply about our own world and how we relate to each other in our real lives and all the different relationships we have and their complexity. So yeah, it's very much its own brand of fantasy, but escapist as well because there's so many cool world building elements where a lot of the time I was just immersed in this and along for the ride of the suspenseful plotting and action, how things would go. So it's this combination of types of reads, which
Yeah, I
feels
was literally
very
gonna
very
say
unique,
like
very unique.
all of this like in-depth discussion that we've literally had.
Yeah.
Mind you, we were also talking about a book where humans interact with ships and dragons.
Yes,
Like,
yes. So cool. Like this is what epic fantasy does that really no other genre can do. Like just the more escapist side of things with just pure world building elements and setting elements that are so fun, interesting, and new and fresh, and just fun to imagine you're there in with those characters, but can explore, you know, humanity and life and all different kinds of themes in really deep ways too, like literary fiction does. So it's that combination which makes epic fantasy very very special. Yeah. And then Chatty here the comment about Kefria. First time Kefri had to think for herself before Kyle left. She always had her mother and Kyle. She's capable. Others haven't allowed it before. Yeah, that really is the basis for her character arc, and her journey is really meaningful as she becomes more independent. And I think a lot of characters have maybe not the exact same arc, but similar arcs. Like Brashian is learning to be his own independent captain and really grow into that role. When so many people doubted him, and Althea too felt the same way. People doubting her, I think, because she's female, and female sailors and captains are not common in this region of the world. Uh, and she's growing into that role and becoming more confident. But Colin, do you know how it ended with? I think you finished this more recently than I did. Where did it end with like Brashian, Althea, and Paragon and Vivacia? Like, who's captain of what ship, and like where are the ships? What are the ships doing? Like,
so I'm pretty sure that Brashian the whole time thought that Althea was just going to go back to Vivacia. And then
yeah,
Althea was just like, I can't in good faith take that ship. It's not mine anymore. Like it's Wintrow's.
yeah,
So I think Wintro is actually going to be the captain of the
Okay.
Vivacia.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that Althea has agreed to stay on Paragon with Brashen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. And what were they doing though? What was Paragon up to at the end?
I
Do you
actually
know?
don't know. I have the book
Yeah.
here. Let me see if I can jar my memory. I'm sure Derry or somebody that's read it.
I'm so curious about like Vivacia and Bolt, and like, because they do seem like they're separate personalities. They're distinct entities, but are they kind of like separate? Is Bolt suppressed when Vivacia is kind of more active? Are they melded into one kind of partnership? I'm very confused about how it works between the Liveship entity and the still like living dragon personalities within them.
It almost seemed like the okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and then
yeah.
Malta went back to, I think, Jamalia, right, for a little while with the
Yeah,
satrap.
they had their ball where they were dancing and they were the center of attention. That was such a great scene. Like, I love falling action scenes in general after climactic moments, and this was the falling action for the whole series. I couldn't have loved it more, where Malta and Rain are just the center of attention at this
Yes.
ball, and they're dancing, but they're not trying to show off for everyone. They're just having their own like private moment together on the dance floor.
Even
And
just a
like,
tiny bit
yeah,
of anticipation that we got when Malta finally spun quick enough to show the little green trimmings of her dress that she was talking about.
yeah,
Do you remember
yeah,
that
yeah,
part?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, I think the ships all kind of just accepted. Yeah, like they just accepted, or they're learning to accept that they are going to be these like multi-personality beings.
Yeah. I feel like there's a metaphor in there, maybe about like our own varied aspects of our personality, and then uh, trying to come to terms with just that we have different sides to ourselves, and trying to learn to live with that we can be different people in different situations or with others, or and just trying to be comfortable with our whole identity and with all of its different facets. I feel like there's a nice maybe metaphor there that Hob is literalizing with the different live ship personalities. But even if it's just the completely fantastical, like this is actually a dragon remnant that is merging with this new entity that's formed by memories of the people that have sailed the live ship. Like it feels like the live ships are their very own living distinct entities. So I'm glad that they don't just get completely subsumed by the dragon personalities when they awakened.
Yeah,
I was kind of worried about that.
the only the only other main large page time character we haven't really talked about, I feel like, is the satrap. How did you
Oh
feel about
yeah.
the satrap by the end of this?
Oh man.
I didn't hate him as much by
Yeah,
the end of this
totally,
one.
totally. Like I definitely was just, I think, like Malta, getting just like used to being around the satrap and realizing that he's very immature, kind of not harmless, because he did maybe not realize all the harm he was doing to Cyrilla at the time when he ordered her to go with the Chalcidian. But like, he's not harmless, but like he's he's just this not fully formed person. He came into his authority and power too soon, and he does have maybe some aspects to his personality that he could be affectionate towards others, or but I definitely was less annoyed by him and was more interested by the situation of being like, Keki also was a character that really came alive here, as even though she didn't last too long. Like, we realized that she was a complex personality, and
Yeah.
had her own rich internal life, and figured out how to manage the satrap, and and so she was passing on some of that to Malta, and felt
Well,
really bad when she
she
died.
she kind of springboarded Malta into just becoming the character that Malta became, to be honest. I mean, so many of Malta's actions post meeting Keki were influenced by advice that Keki gave her, like using the rag to keep guys away from her.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
she was
yeah,
just saying,
yeah.
like there's like literally a like it almost felt like a religious based belief that this culture
Yeah, yeah.
literally thought that a woman on her period meant that like they could like attack a guy. Like I so like that helped her to stand up
Mm-hmm.
to like potential assault. Keki taught her how to like Malta and the satrap ended up helping each other a ton to grow.
Yeah,
And then we
yeah,
get this like
yeah.
I mean we get the whole backstory of like the satrap just kind of like breaking down and being like, listen, nobody told me how to do this. Like you said, like I just was wooed by all of these uh heads of cities
Yeah.
and states, by all these gifts
Yeah.
and smokes and herbs
Yeah.
and
They were probably
drugs
just
and
wanting to
drinks and
manipulate him to their own ends, and
yeah.
keep him drugged up, and just yeah, like he had such an arrested development with his dad dying when he was young.
He's just like, everybody hates
Yeah.
me and everybody wants me to know what to do, and I'm supposed to have these
But yeah,
advisors that I trust, and then I trust them, and then everybody gets mad at me. So what do you want me to
but
do? Like,
and he actually seems to have a thinking brain, because you're right, Malta did help him grow and realize that he wasn't being a good ruler, and he seems to want to actually be capable and competent, and he seems to actually have some self-awareness by the end of this book. And so yeah, that was fun and interesting to see the satrap not just being like a throwaway caricature character,
yeah.
but
And
to
he
have
made
some
like he
growth and
even
arc.
made
Yeah.
like comments about like becoming more cultured. Like he's like, I've traveled the world now. Like I've seen there's so much more to this world, and it is so much more ruthless and dangerous than I ever would have imagined sitting, in Jamalia and just doing what I was doing before. Like, I'm glad I did this. It was not easy, but I am now a traveled man. Nobody can tell me I didn't do that and survive it. Like, you see like this growth. I mean, he's still kind of a little bit hard to bear because he
Yeah,
acts
yeah,
like a child, but
yeah,
he
yeah.
definitely had a lot more growth than I thought I would ever see. And in large part
Absolutely.
due
Yeah,
to Malta.
absolutely. 100%. That was a joy, honestly, in this book, and an unexpected one, because the satrap was just getting on my nerves and doing bad things in the last book. Derry said Reign and Malta become king and queen of the Elderlings. Very cool. Celebrated in Jamalia before going home to the Rainwells. I just wanted this series to continue, because like Selden and Rain are going to be
Yep.
like leading this excavation of this new old or this old Elderling city, and it feels like this whole like old culture of Elderlings and dragons is about to be revived. And like, oh man, this is so much cool stuff that's about to happen. And I think Derry said at the very beginning like what the time jumps are between the series.
I was just thinking about that. So
I
I
have
have a feeling that when we have you started Fool's
no,
Errand
no,
yet? I
not
haven't
yet.
either. I feel like we're just kind of immediately gonna like be thrust into like the recent history effects of what the events of the Liveship Traders had
Mm,
on the entire realm. You know what I mean? Like, because
yeah.
if it was 7 or 8 years, if Tawny Man happened 7 or 8 years after this, then the dragons are going to have hatched. The world is going to be different by the time we start Fool's Errand.
Yeah, Arla says I want all of the sub series to continue. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we just want more. I mean, it's great that we got as much as we did. I mean, it's what a 16 book series with
Yeah.
some short stories and novellas. Oh, speaking of the short stories, I haven't read those yet, but apparently in that Inheritance collection, there's a couple that take place within the live ship. setting or timeline. So
yeah, Derry asked if we were going to read the, I think it's a novella, the Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. I guess if we were going to do it chronologically in between Liveship and Tawny Man is when it's recommended. But I kind of, like I told Dario, I kind of want to save it for after we finish the series, because I know when I finish this series that I'm going to want to come back to this world at some point in some way.
Oh, yeah. The Fitz books set things up, and not Fitz books happen as a result, and where we get all the world building. Ooh, man, I love that. Love that there are these interweaving effects between these series. I'm having trouble figuring out like how to categorize it. I'm keeping them separate series right now for me in my brain, where it's like Farseer is the Farseer trilogy, Liveship Traders is its own series. In my mind, there's two separate series right now, especially because I read them so far apart. But maybe eventually I'll feel like it's just one, the realm of the Elderlings.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that just because it's been so close to a period of time that I've read them. I guess the first time I read Farseer was last summer around this time, but then I reread it in January. So
yeah. Darius says the inheritance stories are in the world, but not at all related. One is an early history of the Rain Wilds. Ooh, that sounds intriguing. Very intriguing. I want to read it all, though. I don't think I'll even have time, though, because I'm in the Keymark readathon to fit in like the Piebald Prince novella.
Oh yeah,
before Golden Fool, and you got Gardens of the Moon going on.
Yeah, I haven't started that yet. I'm still reading Becoming a Druid right now, so
nice. Yeah, you're getting a little bit of lightness between all the heaviness.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts here?
I was going to say, is there anybody, anyone in the chat can let us know if we missed any major characters or points? I think we covered most of the stuff that came to my mind immediately. This series blew me away. That Kenneth reveal, Paragon, it just like I remember messaging you on Discord. I was literally floored. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And there's so many. Do you remember how many times Kenneth says, "By the luck of my name"? I thought about that after the reveal. I was like, there were literally so many times I could have put this together, and I never did.
My God, this is gonna be a type of series where when we reread it, like there's gonna be a million things that just from that one reveal alone that we're just going to be thinking about, that we are. So we're going to make the reread different than how we were experiencing it the first time. Oh man, it was so good. Such an amazing reveal and an arc of the series, and so many different emotional character arcs. But I really loved the plotting of the series, like the way that the convergences happened at the end of each of these books, and just the unpredictable nature of what would happen when these convergences happened. And man, I loved all the different locations. They're so varied. The Rain Wilds, the Bingtown, such a cool political situation going on there. It's also like a type of setting we don't get too often in fantasy, where it's like the 1700s like type of setting, like Bingtown is.
Yeah.
Where it's like pre-industrial, but also not medieval. So
yeah,
I just enjoyed that kind of setting, and the live ships made it so intriguing. That, man, once the dragons started getting to play, the serpents throughout with these little interludes of them, just like so intriguing about what's going on with them and the slow unfolding. I even got attached to that one white serpent, like who was like a troublemaker, but then he was the only one who was really like breaking away from the herd and like just supporting Bolt. And then he was like, when he just died at the towards the end of an arrow, like I'm like, oh no, like I loved him so much. Hob got me so attached to so many beings and characters.
That one serpent death, it did hurt.
Yep, Darius says the reread is phenomenal. Yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. All right, thanks, Colin, so much for joining me on this. You enriched my reading experience. This trilogy just I don't even know how many fold. It can't be figured out, because like I think I was reading it like a little bit just more with more of a focus than I even normally would, of just like wanting to catch everything and to be invested in it. So, you know, I could have these chats with you and be able to comment on everything. So, just it was great hearing all your thoughts along the way, and just yeah, thanks for encouraging me to finally pick this series up.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is so much fun. I love having these discussions, and thank you to everybody in the chat who makes this even more fun than
Amen.
just Ben and
Amen.
I talking to each other, because you guys bring up stuff that I forgot or wanted to talk about, but then we get on some other tangent and I forget to bring it up. So
Yep.
yeah, this has been a blast. I cannot wait to do Tawny Man with you and get back to Fitz.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, what a great moment in the falling action also that I wasn't predicting. Them finding Egrat's hoard.
Oh
Just
yeah, I completely forgot about that.
like the falling action in this book was just so good. Like the Jamalia ball with the elderlings
Yeah,
dancing, them finding Egrat's hoard, like Althea, like coming to terms with her trauma and Paragon taking it from her. Like the falling action in this book, like, oh my god, so good. The climactic whole situation is amazing. Falling action amazing. Just did not want it to end.
I know.
Derry, no, it's okay. How are you in the chat? We loved it. I loved it.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Thank
I
you
know it's
so
late
much.
for
Yeah,
you. So
yeah.
thank you
Get
for
some sleep. Get some sleep, and we'll chat about the series soon with you on your channel.
Yes. Absolutely.
All
Cool.
right.
All right, Ben.
Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for stopping by.
Have a good one.
See ya.